Okay, it is time for data, new notebook and drive, data as dictionaries. This will be our last main topic. Data as dictionaries. We can just call it dictionaries as well. Um, what's a dictionary in Python? We can think of the English dictionary where you have our words and definitions. In Python, it's keys and values. So let's set something up like gravity, and basically it's going to have measurements. And the way you would do that, use curly brackets. Now that's an empty dictionary. Okay, you could store an empty dictionary, press Shift Enter. I knew this was going to happen because I was not closing them. So whenever this happens, just click Manage Sessions, and then you can just X them all out here. I feel like this is kind of more efficient. And then close and go back. Okay, so that's an empty dictionary. And let's just check the type. Okay, you might wonder, like, is it still an actual dictionary if you don't put... Actually, it might not be because a set actually has the same structure. It does say that was a dictionary. Okay, so what kind of gravity measurements do we have? Well, you could have days, like day one. So that's a key. Now, what's the value? It could be a number. It could be another string. It could be a list of numbers. So we'll just put in some... We're trying to measure the gravitational force on Earth, maybe like 9.4, 9.9, 10.2. Okay, and then you've got like another day. Now, if you press return, it lines up nicely. So we've got day 2. We have another list of measurements. Maybe it's 9.3, 9.9, 9.8. And maybe you skip some days and you go down to day 5 and you get 3 more measurements. And let's go with 10.2, 10.1, and that good old 9.8. Okay, so now we store our data, and what do we do with it? Well, you can do all kinds of things with it, like let's learn how to access it first. So we have this dictionary type. What can we do? Gravity dot. Okay, you can see here are like the keys and the values. If we put in the keys, now you want to put in the parentheses here. So it accesses your dictionary and you can see there they are. Now it looks a little kind of weird. And so if you wanted to sort of show them better, you could say something like for key in gravity.keys, okay, print key. And this now looks kind of a little cleaner in terms of what you actually see on your computer. You could do something similar with values. How would you in fact do something like get the total, like what's the mean measurement? Okay, like this is probably the best way to store data. Okay, data frames can be stored as dictionaries. Let's get rid of this here. And well, there are different ways to do this, right? So you could do like for, it's like a list. Now, if you do a list, so that's a keyword in Python. So for something like measurements in gravity dot values, now we've got the list, right? Those are the lists. Okay, so what do we do with each of the lists? Well, so for instance, this is going to deliver 1, 2, and then 3 lists. Well, let's maybe add them up. Okay, let's just code this sort of the hard way. Hard way meaning like not using NumPy shortcuts. So we have some list of like what's the total, right? Let's just add them all up and then divide. So the total would be 0 to start with. And then if you get in there, well, now you've got to look in for the numbers in the measurements. Right? The measurements are really the lists. I'm going to say lists, okay? I think it's more clear. So these are the individual lists. I'll go plural. Now for the numbers in the lists, right? So now I'm getting the individual numbers. And what I can do now, loop inside of a loop, I can add to the total each of those individual numbers. Okay, so I'm going to get a total here. And then finally what I need to do is I need to figure out what's the length of my, lists. Well, imagine that you couldn't count them. You want to use code to get things like this. So you can use it getting length each time you have one of these lists. So the um, how would you call it? It's almost like the number, it's almost like a count. You could just do it here now that I think about it, because each time you're adding a number, you can add your count also, right? Counting is really useful in programming. You could just have a count equals 0, and each time you add a number, well, that's going to give you your total number, and so now you can just return the total divided by the count. And the expectation here, how do we know if we're on the right track? Well, these are sort of centered around 9.8, right? I was trying to go a little higher and lower because 9.8 is the gravitational, it's the acceleration on Earth due to gravity. Okay, so if we press Shift Enter, get 9.84, overshooting by a little. You got to take into your uncertainty into account with your measurements, but that is how you would basically get inside of a dictionary to do things. If you wanted to add some measurements, so just to show you, like if you have gravity, and then now you're coming back to measure on day 10, well, you use that bracket notation, then you say what it equals. Okay, that's going to give a new key and a new value, and then you're just putting in some more measurements. Maybe you're getting better measuring. You get 9.8, 9.7, right? And maybe you only get to 2 measurements. But what's interesting is that the code here would actually still work because it's not requiring that you make the same number of measurements each day. It should go down slightly, and you can see that it does. Okay, so that's cool. You can do a lot with dictionaries. I would say this, like use a list if the order matters, and use a dictionary to sort of store. It's like you're doing pairs, key value pairs. Other types here, sets. Okay, what is a set? A set would be like this. Set 1, a set of numbers, you just use the curly brackets, 2, 2, you're collecting numbers 3, 3, 5. And if you print it out, just to show you, this is like a famous problem in programming. It gives you the unique values only. So you could actually convert sets to lists and back to sort of get unique values. Another type to store data is a tuple. Most people say tuple, some say tuple, some say tuple. And what is that? Well, that would be like 0.1. You could have like 3, 2, right? We often store coordinate points in math using parentheses. And those work just like lists. They're ordered, they're thought to be unchangeable, and you can check, for instance, the type on each of these. You can see that it is in fact a tuple. Okay, so there's a little bit of introduction to data sets as dictionaries, and I'll just show you one last cool one that we'll be using later for the data science. So if we import pandas as PD, okay, and then what we do is we do PD dot data frame. Okay, there's data frame as a pandas type, and you can put in here a dictionary, right? And our dictionary here would be gravity. And let's see, does this work? I mean, you can in fact call it like df, like a data frame, and then you could show it. This will show the top of it. Yeah, I was worried about that. It says all arrays must be of the same length. So let's fudge this. We're gonna. Oh, you can actually bring this. But what this does is it'll actually reassign to what you put here. So it's not going to add a bunch of new values. And we can check this. It should be even closer to 9.81. Great. And now that they all have the same number of elements, and certainly there's ways to code around that. Now if you go back and look at it, look at that. That's a beautiful representation of the data with the measurements made on different days. And these are basically stored as NumPy arrays, I can tell you. So good stuff.